You found it, the best place for live, local, conservative talk in the morning. The Commute with Carlson. Stimulating, entertaining, and making a difference. Here's John Carlson on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
So yesterday, we were talking about a natural disaster in Nepal. Now we have man-made disaster and destruction happening in Baltimore. And I bet we're going to see more tonight. Just guessing. Anyway, John Carlson, Talk Radio 570 KVI, The Commute, rolling along here. And want to welcome an old friend, former colleague back during my Channel 7 days, David Curley, now with ABC News, who is on the scene reporting on all the unrest, the rioting in Baltimore. Good morning, David Curley. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, sir. I'm not taking that bet with you. Or actually, I guess I am taking that bet with you because I don't think we will see a repeat tonight.
How come?
Because of the complete different state of the police presence on the streets. 500 National Guardsmen now have been deployed this morning. Police from the State Patrol are on patrol from other jurisdictions in town. It's going to be 2,000 National Guardsmen by the time they're done. It's a completely different look on the streets, and I think it's going to be a different day in Baltimore.
A completely different look on the streets today compared to what we saw yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening?
Yeah, and there were two different incidents in my mind yesterday. The first one was where a metro station, students from 3 high schools come in and then take buses out to their neighborhoods. That's where you saw the first clashes with the police. These were teenagers. You may have even seen the video of the mother in the yellow who came out and saw her son on TV and pulled him out of the crowd and basically pushed him out and made him go home. Baltimore police were hoping there was much more of that. Then a little bit later, there was a second incident in my mind, and that was with young adults. That's where you saw the CVS that was torched and looted. That's where you saw the fires in the police cars and the much more serious clashes with police.
What about the reports that the roving bands of small number of rioters who are going with the clear aim of trying to start fires, of provoking incidents? The police come in and then they're on top of the building throwing rocks down on them. It was a very loud night last night, and the sound were sirens, fire engine sirens. There were at least 7 fires, and yes, there were reports that rocks and bricks and concrete were thrown at those fire trucks as they were responding, and that some of those fires may have been set to try and cover for looting. That all happened overnight. It's a different scene now with daylight here in Baltimore. We're seeing the mayor is out speaking. The police commissioner has been out. They made it clear last night that they will not tolerate what happened yesterday. And as I say, it's a completely different posture here. David Curley, ABC News, is my guest here for the next moment or two. And it's a very busy day already for David back in Baltimore. David, is this the mayor doing an about-face, or is this the governor stepping in?
No, the mayor asked for assistance. Yes, I think you're getting at the debate over was the city prepared for yesterday, and I think you have 2 lessons you can look at here. Ferguson was criticized for having too much police force, militaristic police force on the ground, and that led to riots in Ferguson. The mayor had said 7, 8, 9 days ago that she wanted to give room for those to exercise their First Amendment rights and protest, and we saw a lot of that over the last week. It got a little tense over the weekend. You saw there was a bit of violence around Camden Yards over the weekend. And yesterday was funeral for the case that started this all, the funeral for Freddie Gray, the 25-year-old who was taken into police custody and suffered a severe spinal injury and died a week after his injuries.
And we still don't know how he suffered that injury yet, do we?
We do not, and that's part of the problem. I think when you have that answer, that's the pressure release valve, and that release valve has not been opened yet. And that's what citizens are waiting for. The city had said that they were going to have answers by this Friday. They're now kind of saying we may not have answers by Friday. But don't forget, there were 6 officers that were involved in this. 5 of them have talked to police. They talked to them the day of the incident, and 1 has not.
You're talking about the death of Freddie Gray. 5
correct.
of the 6 officers.
And, yeah, right. And 1 is not. He exercised his constitutional right not to speak to investigators.
David, we keep seeing the reports, 15 wounded police officers. How many of those injured are seriously hurt?
13 of them were treated and released. 2 were in the hospital. Early in the afternoon yesterday, they described one of them as unresponsive, which is very concerning.
Right.
They did not give us any further details last night or go into any detail about the 2 officers who apparently were held overnight and are still hospitalized this morning.
Okay. How many protesters have been injured?
There were 27 arrests. We haven't given a number on how many were actually injured. And that 27 was at 7 o'clock last night Eastern time. So I would assume that overnight there were additional arrests, and so we're probably at a number higher than that.
All right. David Curley, a whole lot here to digest, and I really appreciate you giving us the latest updates. Again, there are now, you say, 2,000 law enforcement on the streets of Baltimore?
No, more than that. There are 500 National Guardsmen here, deployed, armed, on the streets. Mm-hmm. That number will go to 2,000 National Guardsmen. And then you have the Baltimore City Police and State Patrol and additional police from other surrounding jurisdictions. So by later today, you can see that there are going to be thousands of officers and law enforcement and National Guardsmen on the streets of Baltimore. And once again, John, if we haven't spoken about this was in a multi-block area in one neighborhood. This is not spread to downtown Baltimore. This is not all over the city. This is in one neighborhood, the neighborhood where Freddie Gray was taken into custody.
All right. And the Orioles games, have they been
postponed last night? No word on whether they're going to get back to playing baseball or not.
All right. Very good. One last thing, David. In Ferguson, everything had a racial edge because you had a largely white-governed town and black rioters. Here, it seems that everyone in the equation here is African-American. The rioters, but also the politicians, the preachers, the shop owners, etc.
An unarmed young black man died in police custody, and people in this city want answers, and they have not gotten the answers. And it sounds like city officials may delay some of those answers now, just as the investigation continues. There is still there are racial undertones here, but there have been problems with the police department and many of its citizens, and especially in this neighborhood. If you've ever watched the series The Wire, this is the neighborhood we're talking about.
Right, I have. And a great series, and the neighborhood back then.
It's a troubled neighborhood.
Very
this
troubled.
is a city that's been losing population. This is a city that's, been trying to create some economic development and economic growth. It is a troubled city.
All right. David Curley, great hearing.
One last thing, John, before we go. There was a Justice Department investigation started last fall about how to fix this police department because of the tension between the police department and certain parts of its community. So this is another symptom of that trouble that is now being addressed. And the only thing I have finally to say, John, if you'll give me just one light moment.
Sure.
Go M's.
Hey, I like it. David Curley, remembering his roots. Thanks very much, Dave. That's David Curley from ABC News, my former colleague from Channel 7, and I think a former Como reporter as well, if I'm not mistaken. All right. The looting and the torched buildings have, again, subsided for the moment. David says he thinks the unrest got as bad as it's going to be last night. He doesn't think we're going to see a repeat today. The reason is that you now have a massive presence of law enforcement on the ground. Last night, it was just outrageous and infuriating watching what was going on because it seemed like the police were told to stand down, but they were also told to stand around, which made them targets. And when you have more cops who are hurt than rioters, that gives you an idea that these officers, even look at how heavily fortified and with the shields and the shin guards and the face masks and the helmets, and you still had all these injuries. While all this was going on last night, there was this man who was standing between the rioters and the police, telling them to go home, and this CNN reporter moved in to talk to him. He called himself a soldier.
Sir, who are you?
Just a soldier.
Just a soldier. Very quietly, very modestly. He's a tall, skinny, old African-American guy with a baseball cap. And you talk about showing some guts. We'll give you his name here in this exchange with CNN reporter Joe Johns. Here's the rest of the interview, where, again, this guy's just standing there scolding the rioters in front of the police officers.
And you sort of took it upon yourself to tell those young people to go away.
Yes.
Well, when you're a little bit concerned about your own safety, I mean, there's a lot of bottles and rocks and things.
Look, here's number one. I did 30 years, okay? Came out of Master Sergeant.
He said he gave 30 years, came out a Master Sergeant. So he's talking about his military background.
I've seen more than all this. I've been through the riots already. This right here is not relevant. They need to have their butts at home. They need to be in their home units with their families studying and doing something with their life. Not out here protesting about something that's not really about nothing. They do not respect this young man's death, you know. Now, mama and daddy didn't lost a child. That could be them. So I'm very pissed.
So what's your name?
He said mother and daddy may have lost lost their child. That could have been them, talking about the protesters. So he's as you heard him say, I'm pissed. He said at the protesters for not respecting the death of Freddie Gray.
Valentine.
And what's your first name?
Robert
Valentine. So you're a Vietnam vet.
Yes.
And you just decided to come out here and stand up against these guys.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people would think twice, wouldn't they?
I love my country. I love my charm city. And I'm an American. I'm not black, white, red, or yellow, nothing. I am American.
You hear that? He said, I love my charm city. That's Baltimore's nickname. He says, I don't consider myself, white, black, any other color. I consider myself an American.
Are you concerned about what's happening to the community?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Valentine. Anderson, back to you.
I got to say, Mr. Valentine is just a hero tonight.
Me too. What a great guy.
Values and principles. That's our game. This is Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Well, cross your fingers. Let us hope that David Curley has it right. He thinks that we won't see another night of unrest. Remember, after Ferguson, we saw just rioting for several nights in a row. And, the town, the county, the state, seemingly unable to deal with it. David Curley says he does not think that is going to happen in Baltimore because he says there's going to be thousands of police officers on hand. 2,000 National Guardsmen, 500 Baltimore police officers. There's just going to be all sorts of law enforcement from different agencies. One of the people taking a lot of flack here is the mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rawlings Blake. Listen to what she said before the looting. This is what she was saying about the police and the protesters.
I've made it very clear that I worked with the police and instructed them to do everything that they could to make sure that the protesters were able to exercise their right to free speech. It's a very delicate balancing act. because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
We also wished to give those who wanted to destroy space to do that as well. Now, she has walked that back and says that she was, out of context. That's not what I meant. Here is what she said last night while all the looting, rioting, destruction, and arson was going on.
What we see tonight that is going on in our city is very disturbing. It is very clear there is a difference between what we saw over the past week with the peaceful protests, those who wish to seek justice, those who wish to be heard and want answers, and the difference between those protests and the thugs who only want to incite violence and destroy our city. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore, and too many people have spent generations building up this city for it to be destroyed by thugs who, in a very senseless way, are trying to tear down what so many have fought for.
All right, and again, this confined to a neighborhood near Camden Yards, where the the Orioles play. This has not broken out over the city as a whole. Thinking of the local angle here, what you got to start considering is every single May Day, we have trouble. The Seattle Police Department has trouble with people who go in for the annual May Day protests, insulate themselves, and then break away and start busting things, busting windows in stores, busting windows in cars, throwing things at cops. And you've got to wonder whether the rioting in Baltimore is going to fuel the activity coming up here on May Day.
Yeah, when I was watching some of this, and I texted you yesterday afternoon and said, you got to turn on one of the cable news channels.
Well, with CNN.
I was watching the CNN
coverage
feed.
was unbelievably just graphic.
And that was one of the first things that crossed my mind. I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to inspire the anarchists when they hit the streets of Seattle coming up on Friday?
Because it's not like they need an excuse, because they will riot every single May Day for whatever reason.
And we haven't even gotten into
And we're talking about maybe 20 people among all the protesters who every year show up to create havoc. They were some of the same people who were trying to shut down Westlake Center during Christmas time.
That's right, yeah. Right there during the tree lighting ceremony.
The cops say it's the same 50 people.
They know the drill. And we haven't even gotten into the part about Baltimore, that the Baltimore police yesterday, before any of this happened, were warning that there might be a coordinated effort by street gangs, and they listed 3 of them. Mm-hmm. That normally,
Bloods, Crips, according to Black Urban Guerrillas.
I think the Black Guerrilla Family.
Black Guerrilla Family.
Guerrilla with a G-U, not a G-O. Mm-hmm. And CBS was reporting this, that the Baltimore police had indicated that there would be some, I guess, conspiracy between these 3 street gangs. Exactly.
To kill police officers.
Exactly. Attack or hurt police officers or kill police officers. So, and here's something else that I wanted to ask you, because as I was watching some of this unfold on TV yesterday, they were mustering some of the police officers while the looting was basically going on unabated. And I was thinking to myself, it kind of looks like the police officers are darned if they do and darned if they don't. If they go in and disperse the crowds or start to make arrests or start to use...
Or pull their nightsticks.
Exactly. Any of those techniques, could be the rubber bullets or what have you, then they probably get... And if they go in with any of these beefed up vehicles, then it's the militarized police force. And if they don't do anything... then the looting goes on uninhibited.
And the cops get showered
and things get worse.
Concrete and bricks and rocks.
So is it just a matter of you've got to have sheer numbers and the idea of overwhelming force dissuades them from doing something? Or do you go in there and have police officers actively go after people that are with bandanas on, that are in buildings or approaching buildings and things like that?
It's very simple. You either let police officers do their job and enforce the law, or you don't. If you don't want to let officers do their job, then don't make them stand there and take all of these projectiles, these rocks and bottles, being thrown at them. I mean, it's like target practice on police officers. They're told, as I said earlier, they're told to stand down, but they're also told to stand around. You're just asking for trouble. Now, you mentioned collaboration. All this started yesterday morning with social media, and the word was purge. Purge is a reference to a movie in which crime is made legal for a day each year, and it was to start at 3 p.m., at the Mondamin Mall, then venture down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Inner Harbor. And that's when police began alerting local businesses and getting police officers underway. But yes, you bet this was arranged on social media. And it was arranged for the purpose of promoting not protest, but lawlessness. It's The Commute with Carlson. We got local stuff right after your headlines.
Lars Larson tackles the big stuff today at 6 on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
The Commute with Carlson, Talk Radio 570 KVI. All right, we're going to get local here, and in the spirit of local, since that is what KVI specializes in, live and local coverage here in the Puget Sound area, why don't we start by giving out a pair of tickets to our KVI Listener Appreciation Bash coming up day after tomorrow, this Thursday, Linwood Motoplex.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about, of course, dinner provided for everyone by Sparta's Pizza Spaghetti House, dessert from New York Cupcakes, music from Entertainment Masters. Going to be a terrific time. We always have a great time at these parties. The 10th caller to 206-421-5757 gets the tickets. We've cleared the lines. We're waiting for you now at 1-888-312-5757. Again, 10th caller to 206-421-5757 or 1-888-312-5757. I want to draw your attention to an incident that happened last night. Or not last night, yesterday, school time, in the town of Graham, right near Puyallup. Kids waiting for a school bus. And 3 of these children almost killed by an SUV, a white SUV, that didn't want to wait for the school bus to pick up the kids. So it sped around the cars that were patiently waiting and zipped by on the bus's right when they had opened the bus doors for the kids to step on. 3 children came within inches of being mowed down by this white SUV. And it was captured on the school bus video system. Mark Miller from Como 4 spoke to the kids' parents, and he starts by narrating this video.
The bus is stopped. The doors are about to open. Yes, that just happened. An SUV came within inches of wiping out 3 children. Their mothers watched in shock.
My kids, they were so close to being taken away from me. It's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to watch.
Nobody got hurt, but 5-year-old children Charity says it sure felt like something touched her.
Because it kind of ran over my shoe a little.
The onboard surveillance system captures the near miss from 3 separate angles. Witnesses say the SUV drove around several other vehicles stopped behind the bus.
And when we knew our kids were okay, the anger set in. I took off running. I was partway down this hill after her.
All right. That mother who witnessed the near fatality, again, saying the driver was a woman, and she is still on the loose. They didn't get a license plate despite those 3 angles. Here's the rest of Mark's story.
Just so you understand, the door of the bus came to this white line. Where this driver sped past isn't a lane. All it is about a 4-foot wide shoulder and that shallow ditch.
To have somebody go that far out of their way to get around the bus at the speeds that they were going.
Brandy Wheeler's 10-year-old son, Jerry, is one of the kids, along with Lisa Razzo's 5- and 9-year-old daughters.
They were shell-shocked, and so were we. Her son was crying.
It happened too fast for anybody to get a license plate. School district officials assure me all lights and signs on the bus were working. The bus driver did everything by the book. And so did those kids who were taught by their parents, wait for the bus to stop and the doors to open before you get on.
Because if it hadn't been, 2-3 more steps, our kids might not be here.
In Graham, Mark Miller, Como 4 News.
The search continues for that driver. Those mothers are asking people to be on the lookout for an older model white GMC Jimmy with a sunroof and chrome wheels. Please report any information to the Pierce County Sheriff's Office.
All right. So if any of you have any idea who is driving this SUV, or you've seen this SUV, again, white SUV, there are a couple of reports that it's a Chevy Blazer, the others that it's a Jimmy, but the reason why this is so outrageous is that the school bus had stopped by the side of the road. A number of cars had stopped behind the bus, and this white SUV pulls out from behind the cars waiting and streaks by on the right side of the bus, which is, of course, the side of the bus where they let the kids onto. That's where the bus doors open. And zips by with the bus door open and the children starting to walk up. When you see it, do we have it posted yet, Senior Chief Executive Producer Philip J. Vandervoort?
Brittany got it up on KVI.com.
KVI.com.
It's also the front story, the first story at ComoNews.com, but either one of those you can see at KVI.com, nice and easy to remember.
You just instantly, you watch it and you just gulp. It's that close. And if they find this person, I hope they throw her. She's described as a woman. I don't know why they're not putting out a description of her.
And that is the other scary part of this story. We always hear about maybe a crime story going on, and what did a witness see, or how much did witnesses see? And this thing happened so fast, and it was so startling that the folks that were gathered there to watch their kids climb on this school bus, they were just a few feet away, and it happened so fast.
And the moms were a few feet away.
Exactly.
I mean, everyone was doing their job right, except this jerk.
Yeah, and it was so stunning, they had a difficult time being able to identify that vehicle. Now, you would hope that some of the drivers that were lined up behind the bus and properly slowed down and stopped and waited for these kids to climb on, maybe they saw something. And hopefully we can kind of coordinate with everybody's observations and figure something out. But, this person has to be buried under the jail, if you ask me. There's just no way this person should be free to roam the streets.
So instead of talking about, louts, thugs, and jerks, let's talk about just the opposite and keep it local here. A hero teacher yesterday at North Thurston High stopped what could have been a very bloody situation A student shows up. He's got a cigarette in one hand, a handgun in the other, and he caps off 2 shots. The teacher, who hears what's going on, runs toward the danger and ends up tackling this punk. His name is Brady Olson. He's what we used to call a social studies teacher. Now they go a government teacher. Russ Bowen from Como talked to a couple of students who were standing right next to him when he started firing these shots.
Taylor Halverson says she was just 5 feet away when he looked in her eyes and fired the gun.
His facial expression is something I'll never forget, the anger and hatred in his eyes, the way he just looked at me, and I've never met him before.
Taylor's friend Hannah Scharf was 10 feet away.
He looked like a guy who would honestly not do this.
Tonight, some North Thurston High School students gathered to share their experiences, fear, and just to be close to each other.
And just kind of talk to each other about it and comfort, because, nobody wants to go home and still be shaken up about it.
I was hysterical. I couldn't even talk.
They tell us they feel so lucky no one was hurt or killed.
All I was thinking was get out.
And now there are so many questions about the student who police believe may have been motivated by bullying.
How long has he been planning for that to go on? Or was it just a wake up in the morning saying, I'm tired of it?
What they do know is how grateful they are to Brady Olson, the teacher who tackled the student and prevented unthinkable tragedy.
He's a hero.
Honestly,
we could never repay him for what he's done for us. He saved all of our lives today.
And police have not identified the name of the shooter at this point because of his age. They say he fired 2 shots from one gun that was fully loaded. A second gun was also found at his home, both legally owned by his parents.
Okay. I want to start by talking about Mr. Olson, and then I want to address this whole issue of bullying and this student. I should point out the student says he was never going to shoot anybody else. He... if anything, was going to shoot himself. Anyway, Mr. Olson, big-time Husky, and, good for you, very popular social studies teacher. He also is the voice on the North Thurston High Rams public address system. He announces the football, basketball games. According to one student, Darren Sproor, who's a junior, he said that, quote, Mr. Olson's willing to risk his life to save other students at our school. It shows how much he cares. Sproor was inside the school commons area when the shooting began. He said he was about 15, 20 feet away from the shooter. After seeing the shooter on the staircase by the gym, and what he said was a decent-sized handgun, the student bolted for the nearest exit, and Mr. Olson bolted in the opposite direction. He tackled this guy. Most people who know him say they're not really surprised. That's just the kind of guy he is. I guess the principal helped out Mr. Olson at the scene. He's been teaching there for 9 years, also the assistant football coach. Now I want to get to this issue of bullying. First of all, this student is a brand new student. Okay, so it's this narrative that the media are always ready to play. Was he bullied? Was he pushed to extremes? This is the new kid. Not off to a good start, I would point out. But this is someone who is new, who was alienated and disillusioned. There was one girl who said she, befriended him, and he was, sociable. And then he withdrew last weekend and said he was leaving school in a text to her and said, I'm leaving. So maybe the problem is at home, where he got this handgun that's legally owned by his folks. I don't know. But this whole notion that, blaming something on bullying. And by the way, if he was bullied, I don't care if he was bullied. How many people do you know who've been bullied? Do they pull out a gun and start shooting? This is served as it's served as an excuse, a ready-made excuse for intolerable behavior. And by the way, most of the time they find out that the people they said were bullied weren't. Starting with Columbine, Harris and Klebold, they weren't bullies. They thought they were better than anybody else. They hated other people. They looked down on other students. That was the predicate for that shooting. There is far less bullying going on today in American schools than when you and I went to school. And it's not because you and I are no longer there. I mean, it's just the culture of bullying just is not tolerated today. Like in many ways it was where, let the kids settle it out, or, things will right out in the end. Don't worry about it. There's far less tolerance of any kind of bullying. You ask any veteran teacher, and they will tell you that. Just ask your kid. Compare, the school your kids goes to with what it was like when you were there. There was always, a school bully and a class bully, at least one.
And one other part of this story, how did this student at North Thurston High School get his hands on a loaded weapon?
Stole it from his folks.
There you go. And apparently, according to the Como 4 story, when they went to the house to investigate, they found another loaded handgun there.
And, of course, the parents are dismayed and said they had no idea he had taken the gun. They certainly didn't give him permission to touch the gun. But it just this immediate narrative the media are always ready to inject into a story, and they did it again with this one with no proof. And it doesn't work in the first place because he had just started at this school. Anyway, we have our winner. Remember, for the KVI Listener Appreciation Bash, remember I give away a pair of tickets every hour on the Commute with Carlson, Talk Radio 570 KVI. Keep listening for your chance to win.
It ain't bragging if you can back it up. Only KVI has John Carlson, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Lars Larson, and Michael Savage. The biggest names, the hottest issues. This is Talk Radio 570 KVI. Telling it like it is 24/7. This is Talk Radio 570 KVI.
By the way, a quick reminder, it is Election Day, and the reason you're not hearing more about it is that most of what's on the ballot are tax increases, levy increases. So make sure that your voice is heard. You can get your ballot in the mail before 8 o'clock tonight. As long as it's postmarked tonight, it will be counted. So get out there and vote. Patrick from Darrington. How you doing, Patrick? Nice to have you here on the Commute with Carlson this morning.
I'm doing well. Good morning, John.
So, Patrick, what is on your mind?
I'd like to say, first of all, that my heart goes out to the families involved in this shooting by this inconsiderate punk. And I as well would commend that teacher who made a decision to run towards the threat rather than away from it.
By the way, just want to clarify, 2 shots fired in the air, no one hurt. So luckily.
Exactly. That's the best case.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard you speaking about bullying, and I feel like we do not have a bullying problem. We have a self-esteem problem. I feel as though we don't prepare children to deal with any possible downfall in life, whether that's someone suggesting that you are less than. If children aren't prepared for that, they will certainly react negatively.
it's life. That some people are going to be unpleasant, and some people are going to be rude, and some people are not going to be friendly and don't want to be your friend. Schools should not allow bullying, but on the other hand, schools should recognize that kids are kids.
Exactly.
You keep them from taking advantage of other kids. You keep them from ripping off other kids. You keep them from humiliating and certainly tormenting other kids. But you don't try and prevent them from being kids. And and living the sanitized life. So again, as soon as I heard there are reports he may have been bullied. Again, that's just a media story that they want to write. It's one of those things that the media just want to be able to say, oh, good, this is an anecdote that drives our preconceived bias. Let's link the two. And there's just no evidence that is what was responsible for that shooting incident, which, thank God, ended up with nobody hurt. It's the John Carlson Show, Talk Radio 570 KVI.